Today I have a Beaver Craft leather paddle strop. This is listed as 14 by 2 inches. Clearly that's the full length of the strop from the back of the handle all the way to the tip. In reality, the leather you're working with is just shy of 2 inches wide and a little bit less than 9 inches long. I don't know why they list the length of the whole thing, it's insane. We'll go over some good aspects of this first, which I think there's kind of really only two, unfortunately, but that's enough for now. So the first one is we have grain side leather here, which is the best type for diamond compounds. So when I say grain side, I mean you know, the outside of the animal versus flesh side, which is the inside of the animal. It's not amazing, but I'll get to the bad bits afterwards. We're doing the good bits first. So grain side, good for diamond compounds. There aren't many grain side strops on the market at all, really. And Naniwa do like a little bench strop, and maybe there's a couple of others, but there really are not many. Most of them you have to kind of go for a small batch makers, but this is available on Amazon. And the second one is it's very cheap. This was £16. You know, £16 for a strop is very cheap. So unfortunately, that is the extent of the good things about this. Grain side leather, good for diamond compounds, and cheap, and I guess the third one, readily available. So now we'll go on to the bad points, and we'll start with the most egregious ones, and that is the selection of leather. So as you can see here, there are a ton of growth marks across here. Now I suspect that is from the neck of the animal. Around the neck is where you get the most growth marks like this, and there is a ton here. So all of these lines are low spots. And as you strop, like this, your apex is going to go down in that low spot. And you are going to get a slight bit of rounding, probably, depending on how low that low spot actually is. Now this is not something that is unique to Beaver Craft. Almost every strop I've ever seen that uses grain side has a ton of growth marks. You really can't avoid a small amount, but there's quite a lot there. We can't really see much on this side because I've got compound on there. It looks like maybe we've got one here, maybe one across here, one across here, maybe one here. So growth marks bad. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Obviously these guys are just stripping out tons of leather, not even looking at it, and just sticking it on strops, and that's why they're so cheap. So moving on to the next part is the pores, the grain structure of the leather. You can actually see the pores in this. They're quite large, and it gives it like a texture. You can feel those open pores. It kind of feels like orange peel. And that's, you know, acceptable. It's not great. If we just compare it to something much better, you can see this is a blem, so I wouldn't actually sell this one because I'm not happy with it. But you can see that the pores so much smaller and so much finer, and this feels like glossy without feeling plasticky, whereas this feels like plastic orange peel. It just doesn't quite take the compound as well, and you won't get as consistent polish across the whole thing. It's just, you know, the leather really does make a big impact, but I am being a little bit too harsh in the context of people who don't consider themselves like sharpeners. They're like knife enjoyers rather than sharpening enjoyers. So really this is fine for like all of those guys. And the next thing is being a paddle strop. I don't like paddle strops. I don't like holding a strop back here, having this is like the pivot point, and then stropping, you know, and having to put pressure up this way to fight the downwards pressure of the knife, not that you should be really applying any pressure, and just keeping that consistent. I much rather have my like anchor point here like this and strop this way. So I mean, ultimately it doesn't matter that it's a paddle strop, because you can just hold it properly like this and strop. You could even cut the end off if you wanted to. So paddle strops, in my opinion, stupid. Sorry if you disagree, but you're wrong. The next bit is kind of the fit and finish. You know, all of the leather is jagged. I just don't feel like they've had a sharp knife cut through that. It's been dulling, not been pressing hard enough. Also, the leather is kind of cut weird. It's like on some pieces they've cut with the knife that way, and on some pieces they've cut with the knife that way. And what's bad about that is when you get overhang, which you can probably see on this piece here. So on this piece, the leather is hanging over the top and the underside is cut in. So that will actually have deflection. So as you strop across this piece, it will roll in more and you'll get deflection. So I realise I've been kind of going back and forth on this as I've been talking about it, but I don't think there's many good strops available in this price point of £16. And if you want diamond compounds, you pretty much have to use grain-side leather. If you want to use leather, you can use basswood or all sorts of other things. If you want leather, you pretty much have to use grain-side leather. And the problem is, I know a lot of people want to make their own strops, but getting a nice selection of leather that's actually better than this is really, really hard. You have to buy like a whole hide and strip the whole hide and then pick and choose which bits you want. So when I make my strops, I'll buy like a whole piece of shoulder hide or a whole piece of back, and I'll cut the entire hide down into strips and then cut it up into like rough sections like this. And this is like all of my B grade leather from just a small section of hide. So I generally don't put that on strops, or specifically not like A grade strops. And you can already see that piece is like night and day better than that. So you're going to find that problem. If you buy leather yourself, you need to buy a lot in order to beat this. You can't just buy a small piece off eBay or like a belt section off eBay. You'll just end up with leather as bad as this. So I would advise buying a ton of leather and making your own strops, or just buying strops like this, or obviously buying good strops made by myself. If you are looking for good strops, then I make some. This is a double-sided field strop. This piece is a blem. It was just for myself. I was just testing a building process, so that'll be better than this one. I also have some 250mm by 60mm single-sided bench strops as well. Generally don't have a lot in stock, and if I don't have one in stock, then this is a cheap, suitable option until I do have some in stock. If you're aware of any good leather strops, then definitely drop a message below and let me know so I can check it out. For anyone that made it this far, thanks for watching, and while you're here, you might as well go and pick up some diamond compound from my website.